two, one. We are live. Okay. Good evening, everyone. All right. So, right now it's around 7 minutes to 8 o'clock. Sorry, 7 minutes to 9 o'clock. Today is Tuesday. I'm sorry. Let me get this. Today is Tuesday, February 25th, and we are just going to be going over some of the points for the TransJamaica Highway IPO. Some of the things that I feel perhaps weren't discussed at perhaps to the depth that they probably should have been. And so in this live session, I'm going to be looking at a few key things. So many of you probably would have seen the flyer already. However, yesterday we actually looked at a few of the items on that, and if you guys missed those live sessions, Murphy actually came into play, and so we weren't able to go through the entire program or the entire schedule that I had originally planned. Today, however, I've basically taken all precautions that I could possibly fathom. I even came up with a guideline, or rather a checklist for going live. And so it is anticipated that everything should run smoothly today. Should we actually have some difficulties, then I'm going to ask just that you guys bear with me in that regard. So from the live session, I mentioned that we would be looking primarily at TransJamaica, but more from a quantitative and qualitative point of view, looking primarily at what I call the company's 7-pillar analysis. For me personally, I use 7 P's to analyze a business when I'm trying to make that decision of whether or not to invest in it. And since I'm on that point, let me take the opportunity here to insert the disclaimer that everything that I'm going to be sharing on this live session is for information and educational purposes. I am not a licensed financial advisor, and so I am not here to provide or to tout any particular security and I definitely don't want you to misconstrue anything that I may say as an endorsement for a particular stock. You're encouraged to speak with your licensed financial advisor with regards to your investment decisions. Okay, so now that we've gotten that clear, what we're going to be talking about today is those 7 P's, and I'll try to make this one as to the point as possible. We're going to be talking about those 7 P's for successful value investing, and then looking at those principles in relation to the TransJamaica IPO. The reference for this live talk is the actual prospectus for TransJamaica. As I mentioned earlier, it's around 293, I think it's 92 pages long. And so I have gone through literally with the fine-tooth comb to identify those elements that I think were not expounded on to the level that they could have been. So to start off, the 7 P's that we're going to be analyzing TransJamaica from are price, that is the listing price or the offer price that the company is coming out at. Profitability, that is the company's current level of profitability. I keep saying sorry about that. Profitability, this is the future prospects for growth in terms of the company's net earnings, revenues and net earnings. So that's future profitability. We're going to look at the management under the theme of just analyzing those people who are at the helm of the company. And then lastly, we're going to look a little bit at the psychology around TransJamaica. And then we'll close off by looking at the time horizon in terms of patience and the role that patience will play for an investor who may actually have an interest in this particular offer. So let's begin with price. So most of you would have already known that the TransJamaica IPO is being offered to the general public and to the reserve shareholders at a price of $1.41 Jamaican dollars or 1 cent US. All right. So looking at that price, what I did was I looked somewhat at what the other brokerage houses were projecting, and I also took into consideration some of my quantitative analysis as well as my qualitative analysis, looking at the company's growth prospects. And the projections, the actual growth projections are actually in the prospectus. They are on, I believe it's page 100 and it's page 90. Right. Directors and management, the auditor's report. Right. So some of them are on page 96. And then there is another section where the prospectus actually talks about the company's financial projections. Now, when I look at those, the actual value that I came out with was somewhere closer to $1.80. I was actually saying, just given where we are in terms of the macroeconomic environment, the projected growth that we're expecting to see in the economy over the next, I want to say 5 or 7 years. Remember, we have 17 years left in the current concession agreement. So looking at where our projected GDP growth is expected to be, then I am comfortable with this company, even at a share price, an offer price of around $2 per share. What I'm doing in saying that I'm accepting of it up to $2 per share is that I am actually attaching a premium to the offer price based on the favorable macroeconomic conditions that are expected in the future, as well as the current level of interest rates. I believe in January, was it January or February? Please don't quote me on this, but I think it's in February that the GOJ actually decided to hold the policy rate at 0.5%. Now that is a historically low interest rate, and that is going to have an effect on the returns that you will get on like fixed income securities. And so the equities market in times like these tend to command a premium. This is one of the reasons why we're seeing stock valuations running up to as high as, say, 20 times, 30 times earnings. In fact, I can even recall one company that listed in 2019 that actually had a PE ratio of around 80 times earnings. All right. Oh, my apologies. It wasn't a listed company. It wasn't a new IPO. It was a listed company. The PE ratio at that time was around 80 times earnings. I won't say which company it is. I'm actually going to encourage you guys to go and do some research on that, and then you can come back and leave that in the comment section. So to finalize the point on price, if I'm looking at TJH just off a price analysis alone, then for me it would be a buy. All right, and I'm going to actually use that kind of methodology going forward in terms of rating TJH's IPO on each of the 7 pillars that I'm going to go through as whether a buy or a pass. I like that. A buy or pass. Okay, so having dealt with the price, let's now assess the company's profitability. And for this, I'm actually going to be using the company's financial statements that begin on, I think it's page 136. These are the risk factors. It's 138 in the prospectus, okay? So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to just be looking solely at the company's profitability. So that means I'm looking simply at the company's statement of comprehensive income. I'm the charter. Oh, Jan. Oh no, man. Like I said, I took all precautions, Jan. So the phone is on charge. I am using around 5.6 something gigs of data. So I don't expect to actually have any problems tonight. All right, let's see if we actually pass the 20-minute mark, because that's where it ended yesterday. And as you can see, I'm actually wearing the lapel mic so that we can actually have really good audio for when this actually goes up on YouTube. And I have a secondary recording device as well. So like I said, I went overboard in terms of preparing for this session because I really didn't want to have a reoccurrence of what happened last night on those two live sessions. All right, but thank you for raising that. So we're looking at the company's profitability. Okay, Mr. Gray, welcome. So as I mentioned earlier, what we're looking for is a profitable company and a company that can realize even greater profits going forward. So there are 2 questions we're simply trying to answer in doing this analysis. One, is TJH profitable? What, if any, are the risk factors that could affect TJH's future profitability? And then we're going to answer that question in terms of whether or not the TJH prospectus is a buy or is a purchase or a pass. So I should tell you guys where I am just in case you're following. So if you go to page 138, what they actually start out with is the company's unaudited interim financial statement for the 9 months ended 2019. And those are the last recorded financials that we actually have for the company. So a key thing to bear in mind when assessing these financials, that is the unaudited for the 9-month period, is to remember that there is 30%, it would be the equivalent of 25% of operating time that is not included within these revenue and net income numbers. Simply said, I don't know why I made that so complicated, but simply said, there are 3 months that are not accounted for on this financial statement. All right. What I'm going to also do is I'm going to be looking back at the 2018 audited financial statements as well as the 2017 audited financial statements. So let's see what that actually brings to light. And again, remember, I'm not assessing the company like balance sheet in this video. We actually did that in one of the previous lives. So if you missed that one, I'm going to actually put the timestamp for it in the comment here, in the comment on this live. So you can go back there, skip out that live and actually watch exactly the analysis of TJH's balance sheet. All right. Oh, thank you, BG. BG, so cool. All right, thanks, BG, so cool. So let's look at the company's condensed comprehensive income statement for the 9 months. We're seeing where revenues for the 9 months up to September 30th, 2019 amounted to 39.26 million US dollars. The question that we had asked earlier was, is TJH profitable? And we look at the bottom line. By the way, that's an actual term in finance, the bottom line. The bottom line is where we actually see the net profits, and these are the net profits being the total comprehensive income for that period. I won't go into differentiating what is total income versus total comprehensive income. I did another video on Beyond the Stock Price talking about the 7 key terms. Sorry, seven key terms that every investor should know, and I'll link that in the description, in the comments after the live as well. So we're looking to see if TJH is profitable, and the answer is yes. All right. The total comprehensive income for the 9 months ended September 2019 was 2.14 million US dollars. This compares to this for the same period, the unaudited 9 months ended September 30th, 2018. It was 5.83 million US dollars. And I'll explain that that disparity. So the disparity actually comes in because of what was happening throughout this period in 2018. At this time, there was some work being done on Mandela, and they actually talk about this in the prospectus. So what we saw was more people using the highway, and I went into a little bit more detail about that on the other live session as well. So I won't expound on that. We're just answering the question of whether or not TJH is profitable. So that's the first question. That's the second question answered. So is it profitable? Yes. So it gets a purchase rating for this. Now let's look at the other question, which is profit-ability. Its ability to make profits and growing profits going forward. Let's say over the next 5 or 10 years. Okay. Well, hopefully it actually fit into your investment philosophy, Hakeem. All right. I should say this. All right. So we're doing the 7 pillar analysis, right? Now, the reason I'm going through all 7 pillars is because a person might purchase a share or purchase equities based on just one of these 7 principles. All right. For me, I am very diligent in terms of the stress test that I put a company under before I make a decision to purchase. So what I'm saying here is that if TJH fails on any one of my my 7 pillars, I might reconsider purchasing or partaking in the IPO. What I would have to do is I would see just how much weighting each of those other 6 P's contribute to TJH's prospect as a company going forward. And I hope that makes sense for you guys. If it doesn't, you can put that in the comment, and I'll kind of try to expound on it. But afterwards. Also, there are like 47 of you guys here. Thank you so much for tuning in, all of you. And if you have any questions at any point in time while I'm going through these 7 pillars, please I was literally just going to say, put them in the comment section. All right. I am, like I said, I'm active on another device. That's why I'm looking off to the left here, so I can actually see you guys and I can see your comments in the live, should you put them there. All right. So what I'm saying is you can put there from now, just in case, and you don't want to forget. One moment. All right. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, right. Like I said, I went all out for this one. Not taking any chances. All right. This. I was on. Right. So I was on future profitability. Right. So I was on future profitability. Let's mute that. Okay. Right. So because I'm on the other device, I can actually see all of you guys. Um, from time to time, I might give you guys some shout outs depending on the questions and stuff like that. But let's continue. All right. So we are looking at the company's potential to make future profits going forward. What's the maximum amount of shares do you think they'll allocate to one person? That's highly subjective, and we're going to actually come to that. Leave the questions there. I will scroll back through literally from the top, from the point where BG So Cool came on. Well, Chevon Weeze was the first person to come on, and then there was BG So Cool, and he said you should like the video, should like the live, guys, because it helps the channel. BG So Cool has a YouTube channel, so he would know this. All right. Future profitability. I'm going to actually look at the company's. I'm going back to. I really want to keep this page, but I'm going back to those financial projections that I mentioned earlier. So there were, alright, so they list quite a few things in terms of coming up with the financial projections as to why the company will be profitable. I'm not going to go into those because if you actually go on Kalila Reynolds' channel, you will be able to see the interview with Dr. Nigel Clark where he speaks at length about the company's prospects going forward. And there have been many of us on taking stock, talking about the companies, talking about our theses around the company's profitability going forward based on the projection, based on the items that are listed in the prospectus. What I'm referencing here is the projected increase in traffic that's supposed to come onto the highway. And this is just natural growth. What they did was they looked at the historical traffic growth and then projected it forward. And that's typical, all right? So that's not what I'm looking at in terms of defining, in terms of assessing profitability going forward. I'm also not taking into consideration the two additional developments. I'm not taking into consideration the two developments that were mentioned in the prospectus. These are the ones that are coming to Old Harbor as well as the one along Bernard Lodge. Here is what I am assessing when I'm looking at the profitability. That's not one word, by the way. So it's the ability of the company to make greater profits going forward. I am looking at number one. How is the company generating its revenue, and what can it do to increase its revenue and net profits? So most of you may know this from business. There are two things you can do. You can diversify into other business lines. You can expand your current operations, or you can decide to make an acquisition to increase the length of your business. I, for one, do not believe in enhancing revenue by trying to cut staff or to cut expenses. And I realize that that is something that this company seems to also believe in, because if you again revisit the company's financial statements, you will realize that the administrative expenses are basically flat. And I'm looking all the way from 2014. One moment, I'm going to bring it up and actually show you guys the line. So I hope you guys can see that. But that line that is highlighted, those administrative expenses are basically flat. So clearly this is not a company that's trying to cut staff in order to ramp up their net profit. So we're good with that, all right? What do I think TransJamaica Highway can do to in order to increase its profitability going forward? Just one moment, guys. Like my secondary recording device had actually stopped So just let me get these two back. So I'm going to stop it, and then I'm going to have to try to match it back, because as I said, I'm recording the audio on another device as well. So I'm not saying I'm going to stop the live, guys. I'm just saying I'm going to stop this to actually match back my audio over on the secondary recording device. All right. So in three, 2, 1, 1, 2. And all right, so I'm back. Okay. I see your question. Do you think based on TJ's pricing agreement with the French, will the government or NROC be able to decrease the price at any time? And if so, how will this affect shareholders if this is done? Very good question. Let me finish the point I was making, and then I will come back to you. So guys, I think I'm going to be taking the questions in reverse order. I will go through from the last one, and then we'll go up to the top. And then after that, what I'll do is I'll come back to see if there are any questions, there are any additional questions that you guys would have added since we were talking. All right. What was I saying? Right. TJH's ability. Hi, Candy. That's my doctor. So TJH's potential to increase their profitability. This might seem like a long shot, but here is why I think it makes sense. But let me tell you what it is first. I believe that TJH, with the competency that they have, and we'll talk more about the competency when we look at the next P, which is the people or the management, is their ability to actually take on additional concession agreements outside of Jamaica, outside of the Caribbean, and even outside of this hemisphere. Why is this not such a long shot? The first thing is that if you look at who actually got the concession agreement when TransJamaica actually failed to get the concession agreement for, seems to get didn't succeed in getting the concession agreement for phase 1C. It went to China Harbour Engineering Company. So China Harbour Engineering Company currently has the concession agreement with NROC for phase 1C of the that's phase 1 of the East-West Highway. In my estimation, looking at the people, which is what I'm going to get to next, there is absolutely no reason why TransJamaica couldn't do something similar in terms of going into other territories and securing concession agreements. All right, so that's my first point, and again, that's something that I'm really optimistic about, and I will be very vocal on it at the different forums in which I'm able to interact with the management of the company. I will always be pushing for diversification of their revenue, as well as for revenue enhancement, because you can imagine if TJH, for example, was able to secure a concession agreement on, well, in say Guyana, for example, which is, as you guys know, Guyana is projected to be the fastest growing economy within the Caribbean, and I do believe by extension the world for 2020 or over the next 5 years. And this is due to their discovery of oil. So Guyana has reached first oil. There is a lot of infrastructure that's going to be needed in order to facilitate them taking full advantage of this new resource that they have found. All right. Now, TransJamaica being an infrastructure management company, and that's really what TransJamaica is. Guys, I don't want us to make the mistake of thinking that TransJamaica is a road building company. No, that's not what they are. The competence within the company enables them to build anything in terms of the whole infrastructure of a country. They can build bridges, they can build hotels. They're the chairman. All right, so I'm going to move on to people now because I need to use the people point to expound on this point. All right. So if we go back to the independent directors of the company, that is on page 83, to as well as the non-independent directors. So that would cover pages 83 to 86. And then if you look at TJH's senior management team, which is covered on pages 86 to 87, what we're seeing, so let's just assess the chairman's competence and what he actually brings to the board. So Charles Paradis, he's first started working with the French Ministry of Defense. This is a person who actually graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He has a master's degree in the science civil engineering, not just civil engineering, but the science of civil engineering. Option mechanics of fluids, as well as other engineering degrees. Now, he worked with Bowie's Construction on the concession. Well, he was made the chief executive when the Bowie's Construction concession was done in February of 2013. He has over 20 years of experience. I'm looking down because I'm literally referencing this. So he has over 20 years of experience in civil engineering. And for those of you who know, civil engineering is not just roads. It's not just bridges. There is so much that goes into civil engineering, and just the amount of knowledge that this gentleman with his 20 years of experience can bring to the actual management team in terms of just how he's able to advise the management team and the opportunities that they can actually seek out. Tunnels. Jamaica is due for a tunnel. Alright, that's a segue. I'm not going to go on right now. But, so, you're looking at page 83. I'm reading the second paragraph. So Charles Paradis had over 20 years of experience in civil engineering and the management of shareholdings with specific focus on roads, tunnels, and bridge projects in, get this, Hungary, Croatia, the UK, South Africa, Germany, France, Jamaica, and South Korea. Do I really need to say more? Personally, I don't think so, because I know the value that a good board of directors can bring to a company, and even more so when that is supported by a good management team. So not to be dismissive of the other independent and non-independent directors and their core competencies, I'm going to, as I've actually highlighted them, so I won't go through everything, but you're looking at John Mitchell, who was a director of Proven Wealth, Cable and Wireless, Advantage General, NCB Capital Market, and past chairman of Salada Foods Jamaica Limited. I actually have a video coming out on covering Salada Foods last earnings. That should be interesting. Now, he's a former partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers and was the lead partner of, get this, the firm's financial services audit and assurance practice for several years. This guy is a chartered accountant and a fellow to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica. All right. Now, I don't know how many of you fully understand or fully appreciate what it takes to become a chartered accountant and just the level of expertise that these people have. It might be easier for you guys, I know for me, it was personally easier for me to understand who, or rather how, I'm going to use the word powerful, but how significant having a person such as like a CFA or a certified project manager or a chartered accountant on your board can be, and especially if they're even participating in the operation of your business. There's so much that can come out of that alone in terms of just revenue enhancement or even tax advantages. and I'm not going to go any further on that. All right. The other non-independent director is Mr. Ian Deere. If you guys know about Margaritaville or Express Catering Limited, then Ian Deere is the chairman and CEO of Margarita Caribbean Group. His expertise lies more in terms of the hospitality field. And I'm now recalling that in the prospectus they did mention that the company might be looking to actually enter into the development of real estate. So I think that's there. If you guys remember that, you can actually put it in the comments. I will find it before we get off this live. But just to finalize the non-independent directors, we're looking at their corporate governance guru in the form of Juliet Thompson James. Now, she's an attorney at law and the founder of Cube Corporate Support. She worked with Allied Insurance Brokers. She's a director for Students Loan Limited. And her specific competencies are within counsel. She served as senior legal counsel and corporate secretary with responsibility for general legal advice and counsel, corporate service and compliance. And this was for Scotia Group Jamaica Limited. Now you guys probably understand just how big Scotia Group is. This lady served as the vice president and regional head for Scotia's corporate services and compliance department. All right. So what I'm saying is the company has quite a bit of heavyweights on its board. All right. The non-executive directors, I'm going to actually ask you guys to go and read that. But Alok Jain, and I hope I pronounce his name correctly. I have so much respect for this man's father. Some of you may not know, depending on when you came into the market. But if you can, try and find some old videos, and I can tell you where to find them, of Sushil Jain. You can look up NCB annual general meetings, Grace Kennedy annual general meetings to actually see this man in action. I'll just leave it at that. Probably the best comparison would be Mr. Orit Staple. And again, you watch the same videos, you will see these men in action. And you'll see why I personally have so much respect for them. All right? Mr. Philip Henriquez, he is the chairman of NROC. All right? And he served also as chairman of the Chase Fund. So what do I want to tell you about Mr. Henriquez, other than the fact that he is a holder of an MBA in finance from Nova University in Florida. All right. One of the key non-independent directors that I feel may have been overlooked when we're looking at just the people that are involved in TJH is Mr. Ivan Anderson. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about this man. All right. Ivan Anderson served as basically the chairman and managing director for the Urban Development Corporation. Right, he was general manager for Urban Development Corporation, and he also served as a chief executive officer for the NWA, the National Works Agency. Now, under his tenure, I'm on page 85, by the way. Under his tenure, they undertook quite a few major projects, including but not limited to improvements in terms of sections of the North Coast Highway, the widening of some major arterial roadways and bridges. So you're seeing here that there's a competence again in terms of the other infrastructure projects. Guys, this is very important. Flood damage and rehabilitation projects. Flood damage. I want to talk a little bit about flood damage. In 2018, December 2018, I was in Texas with a group of delegates from the other Caribbean territories. And one of the delegates, I won't say who or from which country, one of the major problems that they faced with some of their key social infrastructure, these are the hospitals, the schools, was that they were improperly built in terms of the locations, and so they were constantly flooded. Even when they had like hurricanes, the hospitals couldn't be used, the schools couldn't be used as shelters because of course they were built literally in a valley, and so the valley flooded. I might be giving you guys too much information, because if you go do the research, you'll definitely come across the news stories about this. But you can see where the expertise of like a Mr. Ivan Anderson would come into play in terms of just redesigning the developments around these infrastructure assets for different countries. And I know that this is still a need in that country, because I'm relatively certain that the situation had not changed. There have been no new hospitals built in that country in the last. They built the hospital in 2007, 2008. In the last 10 years, then 10 to 20 years. No, it's not 10 to 20. So within the last 10 years, I'm certain there have been no new hospitals built. And that is a very present opportunity that I myself will present when addressing my fellow shareholders at the annual general meeting for TJH. Alright? So you guys can go and look at the management team and see exactly the level of, well, the quality of the management team that is going to be operating the TransJamaica IPO. I think I've belabored the point, but I do hope that I've provided sufficient context in order to give or in order to support my giving TJH a pass or a purchase on, not a pass. Pass is the exact opposite of what I'm trying to say. Giving them a purchase rating on the quality of the management company. Oh, you don't see it? Kefash, I think it should be there, man. Because I'm able to see it, and I can see that the numbers have grown. So we have 58 persons on the live. Welcome everyone. I'm going to leave the live up so you guys will be able to go back through and see most of the point. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to timestamp different sections of the entire video, because this is getting long and I want to be cognizant of your time. So thank you Teresa. So I'm going to move on to the other 3 P's for my analysis, and then I'm going to of course do the timestamp to show you guys where you different topics or where the different aspects were discussed. Okay, so we're on to the chat. Okay, thanks for that. So we're going to now talk about the next P, which is the psychology around TransJamaica. And I'm pretty sure all of you here, all 64 of you, know this, that the general perception within the market now is that TransJamaica is a buy. Alright? I have not seen, that's not true. I have only seen one analyst rate the TransJamaica IPO as a not buy. Alright? Or as a pass. And I'll leave it to you guys to go and find out which one of the brokerage houses that, which one of the analysts that is. Alright? I'm not saying it's a brokerage house. I'm not saying it's an independent analyst. But there is one analyst out there who actually rates the TJH prospectus. Very good. Right. So, aside from that, so how I'm going to assess the psychology of the market is based on what the... Thanks, BG. It's based on what the professionals are saying and based on what the public is saying. Guys, you realize a consistent theme in terms of just the use of P's for my principles. Sorry, I just had to segue with that. But yes, so the public perception is quite obvious, right? Everybody that I've spoken to has been bullish and has been highly anticipating this IPO. I know quite a few people who have gone against good sense, is the word I'm going to use. I know quite a few people who have gone against good sense and have actually done some things or made some financial maneuvers in order to participate in this IPO at a very significant level. I don't want to give anybody any ideas, so I'm not going to say what those maneuvers are, but suffice it to say, the public perception of the TransJamaica IPO is positive, is very bullish, of course. And if you look at the 8 or so brokerage houses that have actually published their analysis on the prospectus, the majority of them have actually rated it as a buy, or as they've rated it as a participate. And with that said, based on my observation as well as my expectations for the company, then I also rate TransJamaica as a participate, which means it gains a purchase rating on that point in terms of the psychology. The other P that we want to look at, and perhaps the most important one, is the importance of patience when you're buying or when you're deciding to not participate in a particular offer. Just a moment. Alright, so the importance of patience and making sure that you do apply a reasonable time horizon in terms of your expectations of returns for this offer. Where can I get those brokerage houses? Tiana, if you put your email address in the chat or send me, well, I'm going to give out my contact information. So let me type over here. So you can WhatsApp me and I'll send them all to you. My WhatsApp is 876-849-7988. So if you WhatsApp me, then great. I've collated all 9 or so of them. So I can literally send you one quick email with all of them attached. And they're public, so that's good. Alright? So I'm not breaking any rules by sharing that information. Alright? So we're talking about patience. Now, my expectation, and I'm saying this within the comfort of oh, hi Patrick. I'm saying this within the comfort of this community, is that the TransJamaica IPO is fairly valued up to another 30% on the current listing price. And I don't remember where that actually puts it. But I did say earlier that I was a buyer up until $2 per share. So fair for me to say I'm positive on this company up to $2 per share. That's my expectation. Now here's what's even more important than my expectation. It's the timeline for this to actually materialize. Now, for those of you who are not aware, TransJamaica actually took the decision to upsize their offer by another 2 million shares based off the amount of interest that was being shown on the initial offer. All right, so the initial offer was for 8 billion shares to allow the company to raise, what was it, 10 billion dollars, right, to raise 10 billion dollars. Well, since then they have taken the decision to upsize the offer by an additional 2 billion shares, which will now result in the company raising 14.1 billion Jamaican dollars. Thank you, Devrhoid. Right. So they would have raised 11 billion originally. What am I saying that to say? In terms of my expectations for when this run up in the price is going to take place, I am going to optimistically put it at 3 to 6 months. So I'm looking for a 30% gain on TransJamaica in terms of capital appreciation over 6 months. Now, whether or not one sells it will be based on what the upcoming audited financial report will look like. And again, I'm stating my personal expectation here is that is actually going to show an improvement, not an improvement over the 2018 numbers, of course, but certainly an improvement on an adjusted basis for where the revenues and the net profits of the company are going. Here's the significance of the upsize though. That upsize means that the company is going to have an additional $4 billion in cash that was not earmarked for anything. Alright? Now, NROC, of course, being the selling shareholder, will decide what they do with that additional $4 billion. However, at the first investor, it wasn't the investor briefing. So quick side note, if you guys want to watch the investor briefing, then that's actually on the channel, okay? Stop. My secondary recording device has stopped again. So guys, all right, just give me just 1 minute. I literally need no more than that to just restart my my other camera, and then I will come back and we will talk about talk a little bit more about my expectations in terms of the yields from the company, as well as the right. So I'm going to be continuing on it. I'm going to be continuing on the yield as well as the expectations for capital gains. So just give me 1 moment here. I'm soon finishing. Alright, so hi guys, I'm back. So just to synchronize these two, 1 2. Okay, so testing 1 2. Okay, great. So they've been synchronized. All right, we were talking just before I stepped away. We were talking about my expectations for capital appreciation and dividend growth, and where I listing of the cycle. I'm going to answer that one quickly. No, there's a Paul. All right, I'm so sorry about this, guys, but I see Paul Davis's question, and it's really important because of two things that happened in the market yesterday, and it continued today. So his question is, for those of you who are not seeing it, good night. Do you think coronavirus will affect the listing of this IPO? I have read where it caused a decline in the US stock market. The answer, I don't think it's going to affect the listing of this IPO. First reason is because most of this IPO is already underwritten, and we're already seeing that it's clearly oversubscribed if we were considering what was initially being offered. So no, I don't think it's going to affect the listing. Will it affect the price thereafter? Again, I don't think so. However, you have to look at the companies that were actually affected by the coronavirus. So there's a video on the channel. It literally went up this morning on February 25th. Excuse me. So it literally went up this morning, and it talks about the Dow Jones falling by 1,000 points. The major companies that are being affected by the coronavirus are those with a very high exposure to China. So the major software companies, they're manufacturing companies, but like the Apples and the manufacturing industry, as M Squared rightly point out. Hence why you see the DJIA, which is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, falling the most, right? Now, of course, there's a ripple effect into the other indices on the US stock market. So the Nasdaq was also down around 3% yesterday. So was the S&P 500, but the Dow Jones was down the most, all right? So that's my response to your question, Paul. No, I don't think it's going to affect the company, as well as the nature of this the nature of this investment is that it's an infrastructure investment, and it is less susceptible to stuff like the coronavirus. Where we might see an impact, and I do think it's a minor one, because we're not in a state, Jamaica specifically, is not in a state where we're quarantining entire buildings and telling people to stay home, is that you might see people having a tendency to travel less. I personally haven't observed that. It hasn't been a real concern in any media that I'm following for Jamaica. So my answer remains a no for you, all right? Chadwick says it's manufacturing companies mostly, and that's correct. However, big tech companies are also being affected, especially those who manufacture in China. Apple, for example, Dell to a lesser extent, Tesla is being affected. Alibaba, of course, which is a tech company, is being grossly affected. But I talk in that video, and you also get the perspective of Howard Marks in that video on what to do in a situation like this. Let me just show you a book that should probably be instructive in what Apple down 4%, 4.75%, and it continued today. So I'm just reaching for a book written by this author. I'm really encouraging you guys to go and look at Howard Marks's interview on CNBC. Howard Marks is the author of, is this upside down? No. Howard Marks is the author of Mastering the Market Cycle. It's an excellent book, and it really tells you how to think about cycles in the market, all right? So this is free book recommendation. Okay, so that said, I am going to now go back through the questions, because we have done the importance of patience. So guys, if you're buying this, be sure here how the upsides may or may not benefit the company, or more specifically the investors, in a short term period. Thank you. I'll get to that, all right? Where was I? Patience. So right, in terms of the dividend returns for this, I'll be blunt and actually share with you guys here that I am buying TransJamaica IPO with the intention of holding it for the next 17 years. That is my intention, and you guys can actually check in with me on that. I know that's a bold statement to be putting out there, despite what might happen in the markets, but my reference is this, and I'm also looking to become an activist shareholder in this company, all right? But that's me. It's very important for you guys to talk with your financial advisor, assess what your investment philosophy is and what your investment time horizon is. What's an acceptable time horizon for you in order to determine what's the best holding period for you, okay? So don't tell anybody that I didn't tell you to talk to your financial advisor, and don't tell anybody that Devrhoid says he's holding it for the next 16, 17 years, so that's what you will do. I should mention why I'm not looking at beyond 2036, however. No, that's a bold claim, all right? Oh, subscribe, so you actually did it. So, all right, guys, we're actually at 60 minutes, but so I'm going to be quick about answering the questions, and then if you have any other questions, you can leave them in the comments, and I will interact with you guys in the comment section, okay? The reason I should finish this point, however, the reason I'm not looking at TJH beyond the 2036, even with my bullish sentiment on them, is because I know that there is going to be a balloon payment in terms of the requirement of the required funds to repurchase that concession agreement. And I do not know that TransJamaica is going to have this money when it is needed. For frame of reference, there is a reason why they lost the concession agreement for phase 1C and for phase 2. So I'm just putting that out there. So I'm telling you what I can see based on the quantitative and the qualitative analysis that I've done of the company so far. Okay? Again, that is me. Important to note that. Okay? So I'm going to now make the segue into the questions that were asked. Okay? So let's go back through these questions. Okay. Dwight Phoenix says that he wanted to hear how the upsize of 2 billion may or may not benefit the company, or more specifically the investors in the medium to short term. So there are two things that are possible when you look at an upsize, all right? An upsize is a clear indication of demand for the offer. So here is how it may affect investors. It may mean that after the company list, there is still a significant demand for the shares, and so there are persons who are willing to pay a higher price in terms of being able to acquire just the amount of units that they would have initially wanted to hold in this company. I should mention, so right, okay, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. May or may not affect. Right. So I should mention here that even though TransJamaica is issuing, it's what? 10 billion? It's not 10 billion shares. It's 10, yes, 10 billion. The total amount of shares that they're offering. What did I forget that? No, I think that's the total raise. It's 10 billion shares in total. Thank you. So if they 14.1, isn't it 8? It's 10, Theodore, it's 10 because they did the upsize to add another 2 billion shares. So even though they are issuing 10 billion shares in total, if you look at the reserved share pools, what you will notice, and I'm going to jump to this is actually in the first page, the first set of pages. If you look at the reserved share pools, you will notice and work it out. So look at it and work it out. What you're going to notice is that TJH NROC is really trying to is ultimately raising less money from the market, from the general public, than what was it? It was PCJ, the government again, but through PCJ raised in the Wheaton IPO. You guys can look back at it. So in the Wheaton IPO, they did a full divestment and they used the bottom-up application. Right, maximum ordinary shares by NROC is 10 billion. So in the Wigton IPO, they did 11 billion, but they were seeking to raise all of that from the general public. All right, and that represented the entirety of Wigton's worth. I want you guys to kind of pay a little bit of extra attention here. I'm going to say that again. In the case of Wigton, the government issued through PCJ 11 billion shares. All right, but this represented 100% of the shareholdings of Wigton, and there was only one single reserved share, and that was a controlling share that would ensure that nobody was able to acquire more than a 10% holding in the company. All right, so Wigton as a whole, its market cap when it listed was 11 billion Jamaican dollars. TJH through NROC, the government through NROC is seeking to raise 14 billion, which is going to represent 34% of the company. So basically what I'm saying is that TJH is orders of magnitude larger than Wigton. That's the first point. The second point is that in the case of Wigton, all of the shares were left within the public's hands. In the case of TransJamaica, only 34% of the shares will be in public hands. And so if there are institutional investors who actually, if they're institutional and even more importantly, international institutional investors who want to have a stake in TJH, they will be trying to buy those shares from the reserved shareholders or the existing the public. What it means is that there's a potential, provided the demand is there, that you could see the shares rise just based on the fact that there is a smaller pool represented in the hands of the general public. All right, so the upsize doesn't detract from that. The only thing it did was to ensure that the government was able to raise an additional 2 billion, it's 4 billion, an additional $4 billion. It does not affect the company per se, because the government, being the selling shareholder, will determine what they do with the funds. Hopefully we got that clear. All right, let me scroll up. Is the 30+% the 14 billion or the 2 billion? I'm not sure what you're asking there. So is the 30+% the 14 billion or the 2 billion for general? I'm not sure. Could you rephrase the question, Dwight? I'll try to answer. All right. Okay, so scrolling back up. Everall Bell asked, will the improvement of the Mandela affect the projected revenue stream of the highway? No, it won't. They actually took that into consideration. And there is also, to my knowledge, no other slated improvements set to come to Mandela, at least not within the short term. So if you have a 5-year horizon on TransJamaica, then loosely speaking, you shouldn't necessarily expect any impact on the revenues. And in fact, remember, they did say that based on the growth in traffic, which is around 3.8% compounded per year, or 3.8% growth per year, we should be seeing increased revenues over the next 5 years. Is it possible that they will also pay out dividends of the surplus funds? I can't say. I really couldn't say. It's up to them to decide. They really hold all of the cards in this instance. All right, it's just like Wigton. A very small percentage, I want to assume, housing schemes will contribute to the increased usage in Portmore. That's also true. All right. Up or down. I'm going back now to Maverick. It would be crazy to sell this stock with the guaranteed concession agreement for another with a $4 billion to expand. Okay. I answered Tian already. She was asking for the assessments done by the brokerage houses, and I had put my contact information in the chat. So if you guys revisit the chat, my WhatsApp, which I use for group communications, is 8497988. Now I may add you to a broadcast list just so I keep you guys updated, and so highlight the 7 pillars. I'll do that just before I leave, okay? Oh, sorry, you don't even need me to do it. There's a video on Beyond the Stock Price, literally titled The 7 Pillars for Successful Value Investing. So if you search 7 Pillars for Successful Value Investing, or just look through the older videos, I gave a talk where I went into detail about the 7 pillars. And I even used the example for use different examples to assess each one of the pillars. As well as you can always come back and watch this over, because I did mention what they were in the beginning. I'm looking to make sure I answer all the questions that came in. Please continue. That was Maverick. Just I set the Maverick is here. Okay, so Harmony FX has been asking, no, if we trade Forex. I personally don't. I actually buy silver bullion instead. Akeem. I'm looking through. All right. Theodore, Pauline Brown, right? So Pauline Brown at 9:14 asked, could you define future profitability? Oh, the timeline. I use 7 to 10 years. 10 years, 15 or 20 years. Any risk at that time. Given that this is a mature brownfield investment, meaning the asset is already built, there are actually very few risks that the company faces. But I can, and I did say I was going to mention briefly what the risks were, but I actually did it in by addressing what the potential upside were. So my assessment, this is financial projection. I had saved the page on the risk. All right, so section, is that 19? Right, section 19 of the prospectus actually lists all of the risk factors that this company faces. And this was actually on the thing, but I got, it was on the list of things that I wanted to cover. I remember adding it to it, but I didn't get to go through in detail on all of them, all right? So what I will do, because again I'm trying to be cognizant of the time, is I'm going to put up a video where I talk extensively about the risk. But here are some of the main ones that the company will face. The primary one that I was concerned about when I was doing my analysis was where the core competencies lay in terms of the management of the business. And that was addressed at the investor briefing, which again is on this channel. If you search for TJH investor briefing, you'll find the video. And I think it was the managing director or the chairman, one of the two gentlemen representing the company, responded by saying that even though TJH is contracting